In this video, I'm going to tell you about some unusual places to find inspiration for your hobby. Sometimes you just want to paint things the way they look on the box. You buy a kit for whatever situation, and you decide to make it look exactly like it's supposed to. You know, you make your ultramarines in ultramarine, or you make your French infantry in all the right proper colors that that particular time period of French infantry was known for. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's other times when you want to get a little bit more creative and make the hobby, make the model or the terrain or whatever you're working on a little bit more your own. And sometimes you need to get some inspiration to help you along with that. Now, there are very normal places that you would get inspiration in a lot of these situations. Let's just say, for example, if you're into anything Games Workshop / Warhammer, you're probably going to look at their big magazine, which is White Dwarf, which has got tons and tons of amazing pictures. Or else you go look at their website, the community website, the Warhammer community website. You take a look at some of those things. They've got tons of stuff on that and in the magazine. And you know, as well, they've also got an Instagram and places like that. So you've got a lot of places where you can see stuff that their studio folks have done. You can also see, specifically with the magazine and with like Instagram and things like that, you can also see things that other people have done. They're even taking those images now from Instagram and putting them on their own website. So you can see stuff that they've deemed worthy. You know, and it's so as you're going through the catalog on the store, the online store, you can see painted versions of that model done by real people who've posted them, you know, with the right hashtag or whatever on Instagram. And so there's tons of inspiration in those very normal, understandable, easy to digest places for, you know, that big of a game. But every game out there, for the most part, if they've got any kind of social media, even a little bit like a bit of a Facebook page, you will then be able to find people who are doing the stuff that that game is about that you can then hopefully get some sort of hobby inspiration from. You go, oh, I like how they did that. I'm going to kind of co-opt that a little bit and make it maybe my own, but it's still, that's what inspiration is for, is that you see something and then you kind of draw from it and make it your own. However, there are times when there is no community designed for what you're looking for. You're trying to maybe build a piece of terrain that you can use in maybe 3 different types of fantasy games that you might play. You might play Age of Sigmar, you might play Frostgrave, and you might play another one, you know, and you want to have something that will work well in all of those things. And you can look at each of those. I mean, obviously there's a big, bunch of inspiration you can get from Age of Sigmar stuff because they're such a big company, but smaller companies, you may not be able to find it as easily, but you can look around and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you want something that is completely your own, but you still want some inspiration. You want, and not even just to drive you, you know, motivationally, but something just to look at and go, I want sort of that, but I want it my way. And there's different things that you can look at other than just other pieces of terrain and other models out there that will help drive you along and hopefully inspire you. A relatively kind of adjacent path to going and looking at an online community, you know, for a game or a magazine, something like that, which might not be online, is to go to an actual real community for a game. So going to like a convention or big event or tournament or something like that. If you're watching this on the day that it was published, the day it came out, I'm in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, at the Nova Open, and I'm there, and there will be, if it's anything like last year's, there will be thousands of amazing-looking pieces of, anything from individual squads all the way up to big titans and stuff like that. And there's a ton of stuff, and like dioramas and display boards and all kinds of things, and there's stuff in there that you can look at and get incredibly inspired from whenever I go to a convention. No matter what kind of gaming convention it is, if it's even got a little bit of in the way of miniatures and things like that, I come back inspired. So something like that is a good thing to take a look at. Going to a convention like that can really help to inspire you bring your camera, take lots of pictures, or your phone, whatever. But take a lot of pictures and look at things and be able to go back later on and go, oh, that's right. Yeah, that was really cool how they did that. I'm going to try to do something like that in this project that I'm doing. And it's not copying. It's you're looking at it and you're saying, I like what they did there. I mean, art is about stealing. Someone famous said that once. And you're not really stealing it, especially if you modify it a bit and make it your own so that you can use it for your own stuff, for your own hobby fulfillment. But there's other ways that we can go as well. Movies and TV shows, especially in this day and age, have got some amazing work going on behind the scenes as far as sets and production value, costume design, all kinds of stuff like that. If you're into, fantasy stuff, you're going to want to take a look at things like Game of Thrones. You're going to want to take a look at, all those types of fantasy style, big money kind of events, and then take a look at scenes where they show like castles and stuff and go, oh, that's really cool. I like how that's done. Or you look at just like not science fiction or not even fiction fantasy stuff. Just see the way that the moors are laid out and the way that the bogs look and the way that the dirt and the, all that kind of stuff can help it so that you go, you know what, like a craggy rock face here, but then with water running over it would be really cool because I saw it that one time in Game of Thrones or whatever. This type of stuff can help to inspire you. And Lord knows you can pause it usually or something like that. Maybe take a picture with your phone or something like that on the screen. Or if you've got a computer that's a media center, you could do a screenshot. I don't really understand all that stuff that well. But there's a lot of ways that you can take a look at the things that are being put out there in the popular movie and television sort of genres and draw inspiration from that, both for your models, whether they're fantasy, sci-fi. There's plenty of sci-fi movies out there. I honestly got into the Star Wars Legion game, partially because I've been hearing good things about it, and some people in my area are starting to pick it up a little bit more. But I'd also just watched episode 4 and 5, not 6, probably 3 weeks before, and that just sort of was rolling around in my mind, and the concept of just getting in there and painting a lot of stormtroopers seemed like a good idea. And so, yeah, inspiration is important from those types of pieces of media. There's another visual media which is also quite important, and that is video games. I have built, it's not so much that I've built a bunch of terrain based off of the Fallout series, but I was playing Fallout 4 or 3. I don't remember exactly which one, but I was playing one of those two games a number of years back, and I was looking at a ruined building. And I was looking at it from the aspect of this is the type of building that I see on nearly every wargaming table that I come across. It's that ruined corner of a building. Like everything else fell down, but this one corner is still standing. And there's a little bit of the first floor, and there's a little bit of the second floor. We've all seen that design. And a lot of times they can be a little dull because you take some foam core, that stuff, foam board, you put it together, you glue it, whatever, and there's just not the realness to the building that really causes it to kind of look like it's an actual building and not just a couple of pieces of foam core slapped together. And looking at these buildings in the Fallout series, I was able to see all these extra embellishments, just very simple stuff that you can do to a building to make it look more like a real building. Just different kind of I don't know what you'd even call it, embellishments, accents, things like that make a building look a little bit more alive. You put some little windowsills in there, and you can do that with little pieces of plastic card or whatever. You take some cardboard from your cereal boxes and you cut that up and you glue it on the side of the building to give it kind of a fluted sort of a design to the side of the building, so it's not just that same flatness. I took a lot of screenshots from the Fallout series just so that I could have them in my little file of brain tickling kind of inspiration when I'm thinking to myself, I'm kind of stuck on this piece of terrain. What should I be doing? And go through and look for all that kind of stuff and find some amazing looking ideas that you can then kind of co-op and use for your own stuff. However, we shouldn't discount the written word, even though we're getting away from a visual kind of thing here. We're taking a lot of visual inspiration in to use for our visual building and painting of little people and buildings and things like that. Taking the written word, in my mind, can really help me to kind of drive, especially when I'm building something like terrain that I've never built before or models that I've never built before. There is some artwork in a game that I'm starting to get into called Zone Raiders, which is kind of this indie sort of super high, sci-fi skirmish game, post-singularity and whatnot. And there's a little bit of artwork in that book, but there's also a lot of description of like what the world is, what this giant Dyson sphere surrounding this star is like, and the different biomes that are in it, and all that kind of stuff, and like how it got there and all that stuff, and the people who live kind of inside of it and don't even realize that that's where they're living right now. Like they just think that this is where we've always lived. So when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my terrain board for that game, I'm thinking about, well, okay, so there shouldn't be any railings anywhere because this was not designed for people to live in. So there shouldn't be any safety concerns, and everything should look not alien per se, but definitely sort of inscrutable, you know what I mean? And it just that kind of stuff. And it was because of the very well written fluff in that particular game, that's what kind of inspired me, not only in the terrain, but the fluff behind the different factions as well, is what's also starting to drive me in how I'm kind of collecting pieces to start building my factions. Because again, there's no miniature line for that game. You kind of build and do your own stuff. I did a video just recently about, games where you use whatever models you want. Pachow. And there are times when you do need to be inspired in those situations. And even though it's not a visual medium, if you've got a good enough imagination, just well-crafted wordsmithing can really help to drive the inspiration in your brain. So take a look at some things outside of just the hobby when you're trying to get inspired. If you're trying to get inspired to paint some specific hobby model, don't just look at other hobby models. Go look at comparable movies, comparable video games. Go take a look and see if you can't get to a convention locally. Try to find pictures online, maybe on Instagram or Facebook from that convention, and follow people who take pictures at conventions. I do a whole bunch of it on Instagram, by the way. It's right there. But that kind of thing can really be good inspiration for you if you can't make it to these conventions. And read a lot, because even that kind of stuff can drive your brain forward to make it so that you've got some hopefully inspired output in your hobby to make things look the way you want, but even better than you maybe initially had imagined.